You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the October 25th, 2022 meeting of the LaPorte County Regional Sewer and Water District Board. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Call to order the October 25th meeting of the LaPorte County Regional Sewer and Water District. Let's salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
John Carr.
Here.
Marcella Kunstick. She is absent. Jerry Jackson.
Here.
Mitch Bishop.
Here.
Dahlia Zegas.
Present.
Mark Danielson is not here. Amanda Laners.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, since we have no board members on Zoom, we do not have to do a roll call vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay, approval, no minutes this month.
No. We just had a meeting a week or so ago. I just didn't have enough time. Sorry.
Okay, we'll let it slide.
Thank you.
Public comment. Anyone wishing to speak needs to state their name and address for the record, and we'll have 3 minutes to speak. Are there any public comments? Go ahead, step up to the mic. Is that mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
My name is Tim Grieve. I live at 5589 Wawasee Trail, which is at Saugony Lake in Rolling Prairie. I'm here because I just went and built a new house in 2017, went through the health department. They said I didn't have enough land. I purchased more land, went through all of this rigmarole, had a proper septic put in. I've been having it serviced properly and everything else. And now I'm hearing that they're going to want me to collapse my septic and all this other stuff. I says, you know, this is a brand new system. On down the line, I hear there may be exemptions, but if there's an exemption, which is good for 10 years or 20 years, whatever it is, when that's up, then am I going to have to pay 10 or 20 times what it should cost to hook up? You know, these are all questions that I want answers to. And I think it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The one other thing is, if these workers are going to be out here and in people's yards, they need to go announce themselves. Because I already had a run-in with one guy who supposedly was a subcontractor who refused to identify himself. He just said he worked for JPR, which I found out later was bull.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for a subcontractor. And he didn't even tell me what he was there for. He said he was there to bury a cable. And instead, I said, okay, where's your shovel? He didn't have no shovel, but he had a wheel to take measurements with. You know, I totally found out that he was working for a subcontractor. And I hope he was fired, because these guys are out in our yards and stuff. They should have a photo ID. I'm a retired policeman, so I know how it works. All right? Somebody's on your property, you got a right to know who the hell they are. Thank you.
I spoke with Mr. Greaves prior to the meeting. I gave him my card, and I explained to him that there was a new exemption law that took place this year, and got his information so I can get him information on the exemption. I also explained that until this project is actually going, and until we get, you know, actual bids, and that it's not going to construction in March 2023 like we originally had thought, it will be a year later in the timeline, that we won't know actual costs, and until we all work together like we do with the project, will we know what those costs will be, and we can't actually give firm answers at this time about those costs and what the additional might be down the road. But that we will, you know, provide them with the exemption information, and obviously we have a health department member here that can help with anything as well. And then I also got information regarding the worker that he discussed, and he apparently did call our office about that incident, which is a good thing. And I also informed him of the letters and the hang tags, which we approved last meeting and you guys reviewed, and that is ongoing, and we have a lot of people on the ground out there doing research that takes a lot of legwork, and that normally always we have people in JPR vehicles which have identifying marks.
It wasn't.
Yeah, and apparently that guy wasn't. So I don't know who it would be that would be working for a subcontractor for us, because I'm not aware of.
That's what JPR's office told me.
Yeah, and I will check into that.
Contractor.
Yeah, I will check into that and see what I can find out.
Because they come on my property, they're going to act right, and they're not going to give me.
Huh?
I would be polite to them, so long as they're polite to
He
me.
needs to have a microphone. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, I will check into that and see what I can find out, but as far as I know, I will check into it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your comment. We will take the questions and get you answers for them. Anything else under public comment? Someone's got their hand up. GJ.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Okay, public comment. You got something you wish to say?
Go ahead. Is that Georgette?
Yes. Yes, Georgette Joyce, 7299 East Hudson Point Lane in New Carlisle. And I had two things. My neighbor did get one of those hand tags, the door tags from JPR, but I did not, and I'm a few houses down. So just make you aware that some people are getting them and some are not. The other thing is I had a neighbor tell me about we have 5 residents on the island, our inhabited island on Hudson Lake. And this neighbor thought that one of them was pumping their septic tank into the lake, emptying it. I didn't witness it, and I don't have proof of it. When I went by the next day, this was on Sunday, when I went by on yesterday, I didn't see any evidence of anything. But I just wanted to share that, and I wasn't sure the process. If someone witnesses something, what they should do. I did call the DNR, the Department of Water, to let them know, and they were going to send somebody out, but it was a little concerning. Again, it could have been a totally innocent thing that was going on, but if it was sewage being pumped in, that's pretty unnerving.
Next time that happens, somebody needs to contact the health department, and we'll look into it.
So it was on a Sunday. Is there an emergency number to call?
No, there's not. You would have to. We're not going to be able to respond Sunday. It would all be over with before we got there. So, but in the next time, if somebody sees something that happened, to contact us first thing Monday morning. To everybody has a cell phone to either record it or take pictures and get us contact information, and we'll look into it along with DNR IDEM also.
Okay. And I'm just curious, how do the people on the island actually empty their septics? Because you can't get a truck there or anything. The only thing is by boat.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't.
That would all be a boat.
They probably have the holding tanks.
When I Googled it, they just said that sometimes they float it out in, 3 to 5 gallon drums or something like that. But I've never witnessed it. I don't really have a straight line of view to that side of the island. But then that question came up, everybody was asking. So, okay, well, if I find out anything, the Department of Water was going to check it out. I'll let you know they share anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to remind people, that wouldn't be necessarily within the jurisdiction of this particular board. Functioning septic systems and illegal dumping and is really the health department's issue. So as much as obviously everybody here is concerned, we can't do anything about that particular issue. That's the health department.
Yes, thank you, Barry. Yes, we'll absolutely look into it again. Yeah, I don't want to go into all of that here. That's not what we're here for today, but we'll definitely address it. If you'd like to contact my office, or if anybody contacts my office, we will address it.
Okay. Anything else under public comment? Anybody else online? Okay. Public comments now closed. Reports. Steve Carter.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, for the month of September, Rolling Prairie account, we had receipts of $16,343. Operating disbursements, $4,136, plus a loan principal payment of $1,830 to the county. Ending account balance for total balances for the month of September, $21,053. And then the second page, you'll see the breakout of that $21,053 between the various funds: $14,603.84 in operation and maintenance, $1,841.69 in debt service reserve, and $4,607.55 in the bond and interest account. For the toll road service area, we had receipts for the month, $26,960. We had disbursements of $54,778.87. The biggest, I guess, variance there from what you would normally see is we paid $30,000 for the aerial mapping out of there for Hudson-Saugee Lake. Some interest income, ending cash, total $427,412.05, of which $174,825.66 is in the Horizon checking account, which represents the operation and maintenance fund. $252,586.39 in the Hoosier Fund, which is referred to internally as your improvement fund. Claims. We have total claims for this month, $35,578.18.
Any questions on the claims?
I still don't have the Indiana Michigan power companies coming to me yet. I will contact them again and find out what's going on. I might have to just send it straight to that guy because you signed the paperwork, so I filled it out.
Okay.
And just so the board is aware, we do have a placeholder on here, and we do plan on writing checks to Indiana, Michigan, so that we don't get behind. $2,200 out of the toll road account and $250 in total out of the Rolling Prairie account.
Did you give me this just to put with this?
Yeah, and I gave one to all the board members as well.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. We got a motion and a second to approve the claims. Are there any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by the word aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Nothing from Asbury this meeting?
The only thing I do have is I do have a meeting set up with someone from Larson Danielson to look at the roof tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, is that the only person?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Tom did send his report last night, but he only sends it to me, Barry, Mitch, and is it Jerry, I think? And I didn't get it in time to print it, and I was all out of paper. So I'll have to ask him to start sending it to John or maybe the whole board, because he sends it so late. So
I would probably think and I think he usually does. Maybe Chris or Tom just hit the wrong button, but I mean, or replied to the wrong group.
Yeah.
But I got a copy of it, and it indicates that everything is
normal and
fully
there's
compliant, under the maximum.
And usually Jerry reviews it too.
Yeah.
But
We're easily in compliance.
yeah, I will provide it next month. We'll probably have two. So I usually, if there's something I reviewed it because I was up late and it looked all good, and Chris usually tells us if there's an issue anyway. So I just ran out of paper. Sorry.
The treatment plan always hits better numbers than I can manage in LaPorte, so.
That's a good thing then.
Okay. Moving on, JPR?
Nothing more than what I've already provided. I didn't provide a big old packet. I left out a bunch of stuff and just put the regular information in there. The age trial balance information. So you could see the accounts. The bigger ones will be getting the liens towards the end of the year if they do not contact and set up arrangements or pay. We had a couple of calls and requests through Barry and I about not receiving information and copies of letters that were sent out, and I replied I would get back to them with the letters that had been mailed. So I will get on that this week.
And that's with regard to Phase 2 Rolling Prairie. Just
thank you.
Contacted by a local attorney who said he had some clients that just kind of didn't know why they were getting a bill. And so I gave them just a really broad answer and then asked them to follow up with Jennifer because they asked for copies of all the notices that would have been sent out. And as we all know, we were very careful to send mailings, newspaper notice, public meeting notice. So Jennifer graciously, because it would have been more effort on my part, is going to dig up some of those and send those to the attorney so the attorney can talk to his client and say, hey, these were all out there. This is what you're paying and why you're paying, and probably something maybe about the exemptions as well. And if they qualify, then so be it.
Yep, I also informed him in one of my replies about the extension for the connection to the end of the year, along with the $1,000 reimbursement program that all of the property owners have taken advantage of, which is a first for the funding agency and a good program to take advantage of. So I will get that information out this week, and also told him if I don't, please bug me. So that's all I really have.
Okay. What about Phase 2? Is there anything update there?
Phase 2, not a whole lot's not going to be a whole lot there until we wrap up the asset management plan and wrap up the property owner reimbursements after connections. Once those are all complete, we'll be looking at finalizing everything with SRF. But as for now, we're still in the reimbursement period, so not much of an update there. Understand, looks like on the agenda, looks like Steve Carter may have an update on asset management plan progress. Steve, you want to touch base on that?
Sure. I sent an email, just a brief update for the board. Have made significant progress. Talked to Josh this past week, and we're cleaning up a few issues, and then I will get a draft to JPR for their review by the end of this week. So we're getting close.
Okay. Any comments?
I printed out Steve's email with all his updated information for the board, so if they had questions on it, because you had a lot of information on there.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the PER for Hudson-Saugony bond ordinance.
And I printed for you the timeline. I printed, and again, Steve's email had a lot of information on there regarding the term sheet. I printed the term sheet that Steve had emailed as well. And I printed Steve Henshin's email showing you the estimated non-construction costs on there. And I printed for you, well, I tried to print the draft bond ordinance. I made you a couple copies because I ran out of paper. I'm sorry. So I think you have all of that in front of you. So I think this is where Steve and Randy is online. You'll have to unmute yourself, please. And
Yep.
I think that's where they come in.
And I guess I'd ask, because I bet Randy and Steve could probably speak for hours on the fascinating subject of bond anticipation notes and bond ordinances, but I guess what I would ask them to do really for the board and really for the public is just a really brief summary of what the band is, what it's going to be used for, how it gets repaid, and then kind of how the bond ordinance works in kind of a, you know, for those of us who have a fourth grade level of understanding of bond ordinances.
Sure. This is Randy. I apologize I'm not there in person. I've other meetings with conflicts. I appreciate the opportunity to join by Zoom. I assume everyone can hear me okay. But I can, just very quickly go through the form of bond ordinance that's in front of you. Steve can talk more about the sale of the band, but to be able to issue a bond anticipation note, a ban, the board would need to adopt a bond ordinance because the ban ultimately would be payable from the issuance of bonds. And so what is in front of you is the bond ordinance relating to the Hudson-Saugony project. The project description is at Exhibit A as part of the bond ordinance. And the ordinance essentially authorizes bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $35 million. I understand the project cost at this point is just under $35 million, but in talking with Steve, typically we would use round numbers when using not to exceed amounts in a bond ordinance to allow a little bit of flexibility. So the bonds are at $35 million. The ban is at $4 million. Thank you, Barry, for catching my email last night. It's $4 million, not $5 million. And again, the cost that is expected to be funded under the ban is, I think it was approximately $3.5 million. So we're just rounding up. But certainly the amount of the ban that would be issued and the amount of the bond that would be issued would be exactly what is needed for the project at that point in time. So as we get closer to sale of the ban, if that number still holds true, that it's 3.5 million, then the ban that would be issued would be 3.5 million. This just, again, provides a little bit of flexibility. The ordinance provides for the issuance of the bonds to the IFA as part of the SRF program. There is also language in there that would allow for a public sale of bonds. We typically include that language, but the full expectation is that we would take advantage of the SRF program and the beneficial rates that the SRF allows for. The bands would be sold to a financial institution, and Steve can talk more about that as he talks about the term sheet. The term of the band would be 5 years. The term of the bonds would be 35 years when issued. The ordinance anticipating the issuance of the bonds also authorizes the officers to sign a financial assistance agreement with the SRF. That is the primary agreement that would provide all of the details of the SRF funding when it comes. So next year we would anticipate the SRF would award funding, and the essence of that funding would be captured in the financial assistance agreement. So the ordinance authorizes that to be signed. The ordinance has a lot of standard terms relating to the sale and redemption of the bonds, and to Barry's point, I won't get into those details. I'm happy to if you have questions, but there are general provisions relating to the sale of the bonds, again, anticipating they'll be sold to the SRF, as well as the redemption terms. The ordinance continues the various funds that you have in place, the sinking fund for the payment of the debt when issued, and that would be the bonds. The bands themselves would be payable from the bond when they're issued. So there aren't funds specifically for the bands. All of the funds that are contained in the ordinance continue your existing funds for the debt that you issued in 2018 and again in 2020. And these bonds will be issued on parity with that debt. The last thing I'll say, or two things. One is, depending upon how the SRF funding comes through next year, you may borrow some. There may be a forgivable component. There may be a zero interest rate component, and you've experienced some of that in your prior deals with the SRF. So we can't anticipate exactly how it'll come next year. So I will suggest that this ordinance may well need to be amended at some point next year once the SRF funding comes in and we know exactly how much the district will have to borrow, whether it's at a 0% rate or whether there's the SRF interest rate, or hopefully some of it will come through as a forgivable loan as it came through when you did your forgivable ban a few years ago. The ordinance as it is can be adopted today. To do that, if you're going to adopt it in the meeting that's introduced, and Barry would probably say this as well, you would first need a motion to consider it for adoption today, and the board would have to unanimously consent to that. And then there would have to be a motion that would be voted on by 2/3 of the vote of the board to consider the ordinance for adoption. The last thing I'll say is, in reviewing the ordinance last night, I noticed a typo on page 4 in paragraph C on page 4. It says the district shall issue the bonds in one or more series in aggregate principal amount not to exceed. It says $5 million. It should say $35 million. And that's just in the middle of. So I would, to the extent that the ordinance is going to be adopted today, I would ask that it be adopted with that amendment, and we can change the page. With that, I'll cut it short. Again, I'm happy to answer questions, or if we need a nap, I'll ask you, but I suspect we don't at this point in the morning. Next, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Okay, I don't have really anything to add to what Randy said. If there are questions about the process of the bond anticipation note, I can get into that a little bit. In my email yesterday to the board, I addressed a little bit where we are with it. I do have a draft of a term sheet. I've had initial discussions with Horizon Bank. There is interest there, but there is, obviously we have to get them some documentation, which would be on my end. And then we'll negotiate a price at that point. So anticipate that, depending on when the ordinance is adopted and what the timetable of the bank is, we may be able to get this done by the end of November. It could bleed into December, but I think we're on track to get this done here in a month or so.
So I just had a quick question. It mentioned forgivable loan. A component of the grant was supposed to be a forgivable loan. When will we know? Well, when will we know that number? I know
about a year and a half from now.
That's what I figured.
And okay. I mean, that's a good point, Mitch. I wanted to I know the board knows this, but I want the public to know that even though we're taking these steps now because we have to chronologically in the process, it's a long way from 100% certainty that the project happens, because I think I speak accurately, and certainly Steve or someone from JPR can correct me, but and we don't anticipate this, but if for some reason the state said, you know what, yeah, you got to borrow the whole $35 million, there's probably little to no chance this project is going to happen, because when you break out the numbers financially, it would be too big a burden on the ratepayers. So even though we're approving this level, if this level is what we were stuck with, this project is in serious jeopardy, because we need the help of the state, and we anticipate that they will help us. They did an awesome job in the Phase 2 Rolling Prairie project, and they've been a great partner to work for it. But I want everybody to know that this is just kind of a step in a long process. It isn't like as of this month or next month, whenever we approve this, that we get a check for $35 million and away we go. We haven't bid the project out. We don't know what the actual cost will be. There's a long process.
Being the number one applicant in the state.
Right. And I think you have to remember that, because this project didn't get put at number 1 because they didn't think it wasn't a need and they weren't willing.
Should be fundable then.
Exactly. And I think that's what all the conversations Ken had with the funding sources, that you know, they looked at the PER with the analysis in there, and it wasn't a good number. But I believe their report came back with a much lower number. Wasn't that right, Steve?
Well, when they ranked it on the project priority list, they had a target rate of $90, which I haven't had this conversation with them directly. I've had conversations with them. I know JPR's had conversations with them, but they would not put this number one on the project priority list with a $160 target on it. It's just not a feasible project at that point. So I have a very high level of confidence. I know JPR does too, that they're going to come through with a package that helps this make sense and get this moved forward. So we really don't know what that's going to be until bids are taken, I'm closing on one November 15th, and I literally last week found out the final numbers.
And since we're talking about probabilities and everything, and will go forward, will not go forward, worst case scenario, we would have to pay these funds out of our operating funds were the project not to go forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and I would say, Jerry, we probably wouldn't do the project. I mean, if we...
No,
right, but if you're incurring...
Absolutely. Yeah. Funds now, correct. Absolutely. You're right.
You're basically committing to a design process of, $3 to $3.5 million here of getting to the point where it needs to go to bid.
That's correct. There is risk.
Yeah.
And I would add too, we could have, one tack would have been to authorize a bond ordinance that would, and again, to be able to issue bans, we have to authorize the issuance of the bonds. We could have done a bond ordinance that would have authorized bonds in an amount not to exceed $4 million as well. But given the fact that we have the ordinance and the need to adopt it, pretty typically you include the entirety of the project, even though you will have bans that will be far less than that. In this case, the ban would cover the preliminary design and engineering work. And if the project didn't go forward, as Steve and Barry mentioned, that you would be obligated to repay that ban back. But we typically would do the bond ordinance if we have a known number, and we do. We have an estimate of that $34 million, that we would include that so that if we have to do any ordinance amendments, depending upon how the SRF funding comes in, they're fairly minor amendments.
So in terms of procedure, the board has a choice. It can have a first reading today and carry it over to the November meeting and have approval November meeting. Or it can waive its typical procedures with a unanimous vote and have essentially passage this morning. And then they can do it. And there is no need for a public hearing. I always get a little confused because the rate ordinances do require kind of public hearing, public notice. Bond ordinances do not. So there was no legal requirement that we do publication notice or whatnot. But it's really a factor. I don't have any skin in the timing game. It's really a factor of probably the knowledge from the folks at JPR, Steve, about how imperative it is that the board approve today versus the November meeting. And I just don't know what the answer to that is. So it's maybe there's some input from them about how important it is to pass it today versus waiting a month, so that people can take the time and get any more questions answered. I guess I'd ask maybe.
It's a tender.
What's your thoughts,
Dan, I see in there, so I'm sorry to ask you, Dan, but you're the JPR face other than Jennifer I see on the screen, so.
Right. I think it's pretty imperative that we get it passed today if we can. Otherwise, we're looking at pushing things back a month. Regarding the ban, that's covering all of the work that we're doing and is ongoing currently. For example, we're currently working on putting together our property owner list for the project. So we are incurring expenses both there and on the survey side of things.
Some of these fees too will also be replacing funds the district currently has spent with the $30,000 that we've taken out for the toll road and different funds. because we also have to pay out, I think, another one when that invoice comes in too. The other.
Correct. I mean, if it's not adopted today, it may delay closing by a week or two, which to me is not a big issue. But you know, I'm not incurring hundreds of thousands of dollars a month of fees like JPR is to get this thing rolling. So I think we have to be sensitive to they're committing a tremendous amount of resources. So. Again, up to you. I know we just got this. If you want to take a month to review it, I would think that's. It seems like a long time to me, but you know, maybe we could have a special meeting if you're not comfortable with doing it today, and then addressing it in a special meeting in a week or two, as long as we can get a quorum.
I honestly would prefer to do a special meeting in a week or two, just so that we've read it, we follow normal procedures, people have a chance for input.
Rest of the board members?
I think. I mean, it shows our next meeting's November 15th. Is that usually when we meet?
2 weeks, yeah.
It's November 22nd.
It's November 22nd. We'll talk about that. I want to start doing a pre-agenda meeting with all the parties, because we're going to be having a lot of information coming up. And I had talked about that at our last meeting, which was only a couple weeks ago, about getting pre-agenda meetings set up so that we have a lot of information and a lot of stuff handled prior to our public meetings.
According to the timetable you provided, looks like we're already a month or 2 months behind on district closing with ban September.
Yeah.
So if we're already.
Yeah, that was the original timeline that we had tried to go on, but.
I mean, to be fair though, we didn't. I don't know when the board engaged bond counsel, but it wasn't before September, I don't think. So.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I don't see an advantage of waiting, to be honest, because, I mean, I'm not going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and find gotcha here or something like that. So, you know, I have to trust the people who prepare this and who explain this, that this is the way to go. So I'm for getting the timeline going. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. I mean, we got Barry and.
Well, we don't need to suspend. We could just do the first reading today.
Well, I think
Gary.
I think. Well, you're hearing two different things. So you know, eventually you can. I mean, before you have some type of motion, you oughta. I mean, because it has to be unanimous. So
right.
Otherwise, it's you hold it over for second reading at the November meeting, unless there's a unanimous vote to pass it today.
I'll if we bring it in front of the board today, I'll vote aye, just to tell you where I'm at.
All right. So the informal straw poll, we probably still would need to have somebody make a motion, have a vote. I would probably, even though you don't have to, I'd probably have a roll call vote on both this and the formal passage, just because I think it's important enough that there be a full record. So there'd be a motion to suspend the normal processes and hear this for adoption and second reading or final reading today.
All right, I move that we suspend the rules to have the first and second reading today. That's sufficient.
Second.
We need to give it an ordinance number, I think.
Okay.
Got a motion and a second to suspend.
Steve's right. There probably ought to be an ordinance number, and I suspect this is.
Probably first.
I don't know if this is the first ordinance of this calendar year. We've had a resolution, but I don't know if we've done. Would we have done the rate ordinances?
No.
And this we haven't done a new sewer use agreement ordinance. The rate ordinances would have been last year at least for Rolling Prairie.
Yeah.
I think we're probably okay dating it 2020 or 2022-01.
Yeah.
So, Dahlia, maybe make your motion again, but use the ordinance number to make it specific of 2022-01.
Right. I move that we suspend the rules and vote on the first and do the first and second reading today for ordinance number 2022-01.
And who was the second?
Me, I second.
So we got a motion and a second to suspend the rules and do first and second reading.
So you'll ultimately have two votes. You'll have a vote on this to make sure it's unanimous. Then you have to have somebody make a motion to approve it with a second and another vote.
Okay. To have a vote on ordinance number 2022-1. Are there any questions on the motion?
I want to make a comment with the correction made
Okay.
that was mentioned. The dollar value that was
amendment.
The correction from 5 million to 35 million.
Page.
Or no, 5 million to 35 million, but actually that would be for the second motion when you actually adopt the bond ordinance. So this one would just be the unanimous.
This is just to suspend the rules. You're right. Thank you, Randy.
Okay.
Any other questions on that motion? We'll proceed to vote. Roll call vote. Jennifer, please.
Okay. John Carr,
Aye.
Jerry Jackson,
Aye.
Mitch Bishop,
Aye.
Delia Zegas,
Aye.
Amanda Laners.
Aye.
Okay. So now we're doing the
Well, you need a motion to approve the actual bond ordinance 2020-01 with the amendment of the correction of the dollar amount from 5 million to 35 million.
We're approving a ban or an ordinance for the ban, right?
It's both. The bond ordinance
It's both.
actually
both.
it deals with
Okay.
both the BAN and the bond.
Got it.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve bond ordinance 2022-01 with the correction of 5 million to 3.5 million on page 4.
35 million.
35 million. Was it page 4, I believe?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Second medallion.
who's second?
Dahlia.
Talia.
Dahlia. So we have a motion and a second to pass do both readings of the ordinance number 2022-01 and making the change from 5 million to 35 million on page 4.
5 million to 4 million, isn't it?
35 million.
It's 5 million to 35 million. It's in a section dealing with the bond,
Okay.
not the ban.
Got it.
Sorry, I mean there's a lot of bond, ban. It'd be better maybe if they had different acronyms, but they don't. So
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we got a motion and a second. Jennifer, are there any questions on the motion? We'll proceed to vote. Roll call.
John Carr,
Aye.
Jerry Jackson,
Aye.
Mitch Bishop,
Aye.
Delia Zegas, Amanda Laners.
Aye.
So, Randy, do you actually at this point need board signatures? Do we hold off? What's the next step?
We would have board signatures on the ordinance as it's adopted, and then I can provide Jennifer with a change page, and that can go in the records of the board. So we would want to get the ordinance signed on page 25.
Okay, and then I can scan that in and send it to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I would just say too, sometimes people are excited to sign the bond, which is an exhibit that does not get signed now. So that's why I was referring just on page 25, the board signature is there.
Okay, I think they're taking care of that right now. So
And obviously, we're only getting signatures from those that
attended
voted.
and voted.
Right.
Correct. Got it. Okay.
Sorry. There you go.
Okay, moving on. Timeline, it's attached. Everybody's seen it. Any comments on the timeline?
I think we kind of went through all that with this.
Good. Okay, moving on. Executive committee. Haven't had a meeting. Engineering committee, same thing. New business. Next meeting, November 22nd, 2022. In person. And then we have, as Jennifer was mentioned, our pre-agenda meeting. And attendees, John, Marcella, Steve, Barry, Steve, Randy, Jennifer.
Yeah. And this is what I was starting to talk with you about at the last meeting. There wasn't enough time in between to even worry about this one. And I kind of set it up for November 15th at 9 a.m. And I'll send out a meeting notice. These we'll start doing because I know Steve will have a lot and Randy will have a lot and Steve Henshin will start getting a lot more involved with us. This will also help all of us that have a lot to do get prepared with our assignments, get everything to me, and we can start getting the board packets and information. Just keep all of us updated and more prepared. It helps me to get what we need done and communicate, and you'll get a lot more familiar with Steve Henshin. He's very organized, very thorough. That's why he likes these pre-agenda meetings. And anything that he needs to discuss with you guys about upcoming anything, he will do that and talk to you, and it will also help so that these public meetings will not drag on, because that will help a lot. And then anything that he feels needs to go to an executive committee or engineering committee, we'll discuss and let you know what needs to happen.
And I assume those meetings would be probably via Zoom to make it
absolutely. Easy. Absolutely. We're not going to try to meet in some location. We'll definitely do those by Zoom. So I just wanted to check if, doing that on a regular basis the week before, that time works for those. Randy, Steve, will that work for you guys? Or
it works for me. I just actually put it on my calendar.
Yeah, I'll send an invite. And we'll just plan on the week before, every week before the meeting, if that works. If not, we can try to pick another time the week before.
I think it's fine. I've got a bond closing that day, but, I can carve out a half an hour to an hour.
Okay.
Well,
this first one might be pretty quick, but the more advanced we go, we'll need
It'll
him.
be a monthly thing?
Yes. And you're not on there. I can add you if you want, but we just got to be careful. It's mainly Marcella as the treasurer and John as the president.
Understand.
And obviously Barry and...
We don't have any more than 3.
Right.
I mean, I always like guys or Jerry, just if they have a certain technical expertise that nobody else. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I was just saying that it always is nice to have somebody like Amanda or Jerry who have a certain technical expertise, although that'll end up at the engineering committee.
Exactly. And that's if technical things are needed, that's what will be determined, and that will get taken to the engineering committee. These are basically agenda items and things that will come up that will be determined if it needs to go to the engineering. So if anybody looks at their schedule and that doesn't work when I send that out, we can determine if it's necessary they need to be there or not. And if you're a key player, then we'll find another time and date.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Thanks. Moving on to you. Any comments on that? Anybody from the board? No. Moving on to old business. Anything under old business?
Oh, you know what? There's something. And I know I had a discussion with you, Barry, a while ago. This is on the 300 North Sewer and Water Project that's being done by the Redevelopment Commission. And we need some kind of written agreement, basically stating that it is this board's jurisdiction, but we're I don't know how you want to say it, but we're the easements and everything. Even though it's in our jurisdiction, we're giving the rights to Michigan City.
Yeah, it depends on what the board wants us to do. Meaning, if it's there was talk, I know, back several years ago that, you know, I guess I could just be crass about it, but what's in it for the board, right? I think as the project has moved forward, I think that kind of financial request has probably moved aside, and now it's more about it's a good project. It doesn't really work for the areas that we're working on, and it certainly fits with what Michigan City has the capacity for. So I would think that we would liken it to, and I actually dug out an old resolution from 2016 that we did.
Renaissance. The Renaissance would be.
Well, not Renaissance, actually, the Franciscan site.
Oh, the Franciscan.
Because the Franciscan site was actually in our jurisdictional boundaries. So the board actually approved in November of 16 a resolution basically allowing that project to take place in our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And so I've got to work on that. What we did get in advance of that was we got a request. So it may not. I found a letter several months before from Franciscan, basically requesting our cooperation, requesting our consent. So it may be that if the redevelopment commission, this is their project, they may want to just issue a short little letter that says, we are requesting that you allow this take place. We're going to own the project, or Michigan City Sanitary District is going to own the project. So just to kind of, just so that we are making a resolution based on a specific written.
There's a redevelopment commission meeting tomorrow at 4. I could bring that up.
That would be great.
That request might come from me, actually. So.
And we're going to waive our easement fees on that agreement.
Well, that's a board decision. I will tell you that there was talk of that years ago, and
fees.
And I think given the challenges that the redevelopment commission has had in funding that project and getting it going, that
I was more like get the language into that we're waiving it just so we have a track record that such thing exists. But
gotcha. I gotcha.
That's right.
But that's a board decision. There hasn't really been any discussion of it because, we really haven't participated, quite honestly. And I think our participation is essentially consenting to allow them to do it. And Mitch is right, it is very similar to what ultimately we did with Renaissance, which is finally coming to fruition, which is, look, it's your project. We'll allow it to happen. We don't have any liability. We don't have any skin in the game. Have at it.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Old business? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
So move. Second.
So we got motion second to adjourn. Any questions? All those in favor signify by the word aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.